Hello, everyone. Welcome to the InstructLab CLI community meeting. Today is August 15th, 2024, and the largest topic we have today is that we are planning on cutting the 0.18 release this week, but more specifically today, without any bugs permitting. And yeah, so we have a couple of things. I have a PR that makes some README changes to kind of accurately represent how to currently use InstructLab, because a lot has changed in between 17 and 18, because we've been doing alpha releases, we did some beta releases, and now we are on the release candidates, and we believe that release candidate 7 is the one that we're going to promote to the actual release with a few minor changes like readmes and change logs and stuff like that. And after we release 18, we are going to kind of return to a more normal cadence of release, and we're going to start working through things that are in the 19 milestone and return to more of this normal, community-based approach with the meetings and kind of opening community-related PRs and stuff like that. Yeah, so I mean, people can feel free to take a quick look at this README PR. It's kind of a good thing to look at if you're interested to see in one fell swoop the things that would affect you that have changed over the last release, which has, I think, been like a month and a half or something like that, or a month.
Yeah, but I think it was around June that 17.1 came out.
Yeah, so that's kind of all I wanted to say about it. I don't know if people have questions, or if Nathan, you wanted to say anything else, or if anyone wanted to go through something specific about the release, feel free to just chime in.
Yeah, I'll just add, like, basically to reiterate what Charlie said. So if you've used RC7, that's sort of the target RC that we're looking at for the public release with, like he said, a few changes. If you're interested in what might be going into the next release, the 19 milestones already been filled out to a good extent. We're going to start using this meeting as a forum for folks to advocate for things they might want to be in the next upstream release, or feel should be pushed to a later upstream release. So there'll be more opportunities to do that in the future. Like Charlie said, we're looking at a 3-week cadence-ish, hopefully, for upstream releases. And yeah, that's I think that's sort of the big news of the day. We can probably open it up to discussion. If folks have specific items they want to talk about and put into the meeting agenda, the link is in chat, so feel free to add bullet items. But before we do that, does anyone have any questions about 0.18 release, the development process, any of the plans we've discussed going forward?
It also might make sense for us to go through this change log if we have a bunch of time and people don't have a bunch of questions, just so we can cover some of the major things with the community. I know we've gone over it a bunch of times, but it might be useful again. But yeah, I see BJ, you have your hand up.
Yeah, well, congrats on getting 18 done. That's good. It's been a painful pregnancy. I think one of the comments I would say is that as we've gotten close to the end, we really probably should have moved the work into a release branch to finish and polish so that main can be open for contributions, because there's been a lot of stuff stalled waiting for main to reopen for contributions. And I know I went through the release process, and it talks about releasing on a release branch, but we probably should do all RCs from a release branch too, because if we're that close to call them release candidates, they ought to be on a release branch, not off the main branch.
Yeah, we actually have, I think, a PR open that is talking about like sort of updating that release document and like kind of doing more of the thing that you were describing, BJ, of like having a process that's more kind of around that. That's here, actually. This is actually something that I would like to revisit at some point. I'll add this into the agenda as well.
Yeah, and now that we have RC7, which we're pretty sure is the one that we're going to promote to being the actual release, the way that we're going to do that is we're going to open a branch, we're going to base it off RC7, and then cherry pick specific commits back to that branch. So as of like yesterday or today, we've opened up the main branch again. We haven't made an announcement about it because we didn't want to overwhelm anyone, but that is open again. But I do agree that there should be some sort of formal communication regarding that process and perhaps a change in it for the next time. But I do think that 18 was something that probably will never happen again in terms of how long it was and how painful the process was in terms of balancing upstream versus product necessities. But yeah, that PR Nathan linked is something good to look at as well.
Okay, I'll take a look at that and make my comments.
Thanks. Yeah, that's definitely something that I want to get in, since the sort of development process in general is mature. We were kind of operating 18 under the old process that worked well for frequent upstream releases where we weren't having this gap in development cycle, but I agree with the sentiment, and I think that's what this PR is sort of starting to address. So if we can get something like that merged in, we can get an official policy around it, we can start doing things more of that nature using release branching, proper beta alpha release candidate. And yeah, hopefully making it so this is, if we do anything larger releases, they're a little smoother in the future. But yeah,
It also means PRs don't sort of stagnate for weeks waiting for the
Yeah.
branch to open up again.
yeah.
Any other questions or comments regarding the release? Would people be willing to go through this, or do they want to? Would they find that useful? Or we could do something else if people have any other ideas of what they want to do with the rest of the time. Yep, JJ, go ahead.
I'm just going through the README changes from this one right here. I made a couple comments just now, but
Thanks.
it's obviously very focused on the Linux version of running this now, which I get. I totally understand why. But that's a pivot, right? Because a lot of this conversation with 17 was all around the Mac ecosystem. So there's a lot of assumptions that I know that we're going to have a lot of people downstream that are going to be like, I don't know what the .cache directory means, because they've all done this on Mac M processors. Shouldn't we have the Mac version also in this? So when we bring the masses back, if you will, they're not like, oh, I can't run this because I don't have a Linux box.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. I have to go through once more before this merges. I had that. I think Oleg left a comment about that here. I have to go through and make sure I say, oh, on Mac OS it'll be this versus on Linux it'll be that. And I know you brought this up last time, I think, but this library application space support, we definitely are going to fix that in 19. So it's not just kind of that weird pathing behavior. But yeah, I have to go back and I have to make a couple of changes regarding Mac OS. But I just wanted to go in there before the meeting today and just, get something up there that represents how the commands themselves are run differently, primarily training and generation, stuff like that. So yeah, thanks for the feedback.
I'll add to that. As far as I'm aware, and I could be mistaken about this, but as far as I'm aware, we shouldn't have any regression in terms of like the functionality with Mac. There's definitely been like a Linux focus, I think, with 18, and I think we should swing the pendulum back toward like fleshing out more of that Mac support. But I don't, unless I am mistaken, which, like I said, is possible, I don't think there should be any anything you could do on Mac previously that you cannot still do today. If someone knows otherwise, please correct me.
I completely understand that, right? Like the functionality is still there, but I'm just thinking of the non-techies that are going to want to start using this, because there's a lot of people out there who are non-techies that want to use this, and they don't have access to a Linux machine, right? They have Mac.
Yeah,
I'm thinking, okay, I'm just gonna call it out loud. I'm thinking about the IBMers out there, right? Right, like that don't have access to this, and all of a sudden the caching for where the model is and the commands they're going to have to use are going to be completely different for them now. And there's some challenges with just getting people to use it originally and having it all in one directory with the InstructLab directory, and being able to get the right location there. And now with all these changes and all these examples pointing at the Linux versions of it, they're going to expect it to be they're going to just copy paste a lot of this stuff. And I'm very worried we're going to be losing a lot of time and a lot of goodwill from the community coming back when they see this. Right? Does it make sense?
Yeah, no.
Yeah, that makes sense.
It makes sense. And I know that also, like, as I mentioned earlier, the library application support, I think that's just primarily a bug with maybe not a bug, but with the platform DIRs library that we use to identify like where the cache and everything is. It's not really optimized for Mac OS. So I'm going to document the paths that are here in every spot that I documented, like caster versus local versus whatever. And I'm also going to call out very clearly in the README that like the library / application space support is not going to be the permanent state of this, and it'll probably change in a dot release, if anything. So I'll put that in there as well.
Would it make sense to keep it consistent with the Linux directory that we're already using? Or should like the macOS directory be something other than application support, but still different from Linux? Because I think we can just patch over whatever platform DOS tries to write to. Like we can pick like a default, and we can probably make it look the same as Linux. So if people are copy pasting, then it's more consistent. Because I think there's no reason we shouldn't be able to do that.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, since Mac is really a Nix system of some flavor, I would definitely recommend doing that, and even continuing to support the XDG and VVARs, right? Because I use them on my system, and some developers may. So to the extent that we can be like Linux, I think that's a win.
And I know there is an issue open for this. I don't have it off the top of my head. I think Oleg is assigned to it. And I think I pinged him on the issue last community meeting. I don't know if there's an update. If there's not, I'll reach out to him. I can always take it on if need be, because this is a pretty important fix, I think. But yeah, keeping it consistent with Linux is something that I think would benefit everyone, honestly, because it's a simple user experience all around. Cool. Are there any other comments on the README? I guess we don't have to go through the entire README if folks don't want to, but I just figured I'd point it out so that people know that it's changing, and there's a bunch of different things that are different than they were before. Primarily, as I mentioned, it's with SDG and with training, I would say, are the large changes. I also went through and updated a little bit of like the installation and stuff, because some of this isn't necessarily needed anymore with the, I noticed that we were specifically pip installing CPU, but I think if you just pip install InstructLab, it pulls CPU if you don't have a GPU. Someone can correct me if I'm wrong there. But the rest of the changes are for the initialization of InstructLab, which changed a little bit because we introduced GPU-specific training profiles. And I will go back before we merge this and call out that this is not for macOS primarily, and that we're going to adjust the wording on the no profile, that it's not only CPU, but it's also for the M series chips, which have an integrated GPU and stuff like that. So there's a couple of macOS cleanup items to do here, but I called out the specific Linux directories that we're using going forward and stuff like that. So yeah. Questions, comments, or concerns?
The VLLM, the pip and show VLLM, the Git HTTP, or what is it, line 463? I don't know if that helps at all. I don't know. The serve a non-default safe tensor model. Note this requires a GPU.
Yeah, I think
This
that's
is-
like an add-on to CUDA, but I thought that it should have been included in the default CUDA optional thing, but unfortunately they're using a URL-based pip install, which is not acceptable.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is kind of a weird thing that we have currently. I'm not the VLLM expert, but I know that we have to install a specific version of VLLM that is optimized to run with the models that we support. So that's why this pip install is from a specific Git repo. It currently lives in its own requirements file. So if you're doing the, pip install InstructLab from PyPy, then that requirements file obviously you can't use if you don't have the repository clone. So a lot of the way that dev does it is that I just do pip install -r and then point to the requirements file that has this in it. And it is tied with CUDA. So I called out that it requires GPU. But this is something that it's one of those things that we're probably going to iterate on, but this is the way that we have been pip installing VLLM for now. I see, Nathan, you have your hand up. I don't know if you want to add something to this.
Yeah, so we were working on, this is using the Open Data Hub version of VLLM, and the idea is to get like a proper PyPy package of that published. We had some issues sort of within the release development cycle of getting that to happen, which is why that's kind of that weird Git-based URL pip install. That is not planned on being the long-term solution. The idea is to package that. The main guy who's been working on that, Jason Green, I've been working with him, and it's I don't think he's on the call, unfortunately, so I can't speak more to that. But that is something that we are not intending on being a permanent thing. I'll also point out that Llama CPP, which is the sort of inference engine that was being used in 17.1 prior, is still in there, is still support, and does not require the GPU usage. So if you were inferencing quantized models or 4-bit models previously, that has not changed. So you do not need a GPU for inferencing, period. It's just for doing it with this sort of specific version of the LLM, which can be used for full safe tensor models and not just the sort of quantized GGUF type models.
Yeah, so a lot of 18 stuff that might look rough around the edges, we're probably going to iterate on and fix in Z streams and maybe even in 19. But we kind of wanted to get it out to the community so they at least know everything that we're doing and the things that we're running and installing to actually serve these models and chat with them. So yeah, this is the custom version of the LLM we've been using.
Yeah, can we also just ensure that there are open issues for everything that's being discussed? I think the quickest way to let things fall through the cracks is if we discuss all of these really valid feedback, but then we don't file open issues for those. It would be great if we could just get on top of that as well.
Can we do a quick review of those? Just like dit, and I'll write them down and track.
Do we want to go through? Well, so I think for BJ's point on the release branches, we have a PR open for that already. I'm actually going to put that PR in the 19 milestone, make sure that that's something that gets done sooner rather than later. I did the same for the issue BJ linked about the sort of pathing for the Mac OS X. I'm not sure if there's other. We have. Let me take a.
There, I don't think there is an issue open for VLLM. There is one for everything else that you mentioned, though.
Yeah, so I think just switching. Do we want to switch to like proper upstream VLLM, like not open data hub?
No, we're gonna package this so that
into
install. Yeah.
Can you guys just give me like a succinct one-liner on the VLLM issue? Basically, it's something to do with you're not able to serve safe tensors on Mac because it requires CUDA. Is that it?
Well, that's not necessarily. I think the issue that people are calling out here is that this pip install is weird because it installs from Git. So we have to work on packaging our custom version of VLLM into a PyPy package that can be included.
It's not as
in the
as I was worried.
So it can be included in the pip install InstructLab brackets CUDA target so that people can just directly install VLLM when they do that installation.
Yeah. Also, I think there is no way to serve safe tensors on Mac because VLLM is not supported on Mac. So if we want to do that, that's probably a completely separate feature request to maybe support a different serving backend that works with Mac and.
I don't think we should introduce a third serving backend. I think that's more of an upstream VLLM request to add Mac support, if that's something people want.
I would like to believe that there is a way to serve safe tensors on Mac OS. This is me maybe I'm being naive about this, but I'm sure there is a project that already does this. And I think shutting down that by just saying, let's request it to VLLM isn't necessarily the best approach, especially because a lot of our community uses Mac OS. So I would be intrigued in opening an issue and investigating it at least, or like if community members want to pick it up, they can pick it up. But not opening the issue, I don't think is the right approach. I think opening the issue might be the right way to go.
I mean, it's not a matter of not opening issues, but opening it in the right place. So I think adding a third inference engine on top of two others to support a specific type of model hosting on a specific operating system, it's a bit overkill. I think it makes more sense because VLLM is a very agile upstream project that is changing constantly. They're constantly adding new features. I would be shocked if they didn't have any type of Mac inferencing on their roadmap already. And if they don't, it seems like something that they would be amenable to getting in. So I don't know. I disagree with the notion that not opening an issue in InstructLab is the same thing as doing nothing at all. opening an issue in an upstream project is very valid and just as much a potential path for resolution than doing it.
Honestly,
Trying to take it on internally.
you could just probably do both and see whichever works out first.
I mean, I was just saying in terms of tracking purposes, it might be useful to keep us honest. Like we want to support safe tensors on macOS. So it could be in like an RFE or something.
Yeah, fair enough.
I mean, there's definitely already an open issue that we linked, and there is a lot of interest in getting VLLM supported on Mac. But
yeah, we could have an InstructLab tracker that also links this issue in. I will say it'd be helpful if for these Mac OS issues that people are mentioning, I just checked, and apart from one I've just added to the bug VJ opened, no one's been using the Mac OS label. So if you have a Mac OS issue and you're creating an issue for it, make sure you're putting the appropriate label on it so that we can filter and track those operating system specific stuff. Yeah. There's a Linux one as well. Nothing for Windows yet.
I like how you threw.
Careful what you wish. Yeah, careful what you wish for there, Nathan.
I don't wish for that, I swear.
Besides those two things, I think VLM was a good call out, and fixing it up for macOS is a good call out. Everything else, I think we've already probably discussed in some way, like SDG how it now has pipelines to run different sorts of things based on if you have a GPU, and then training, of course, has a bunch of enhancements, and we've introduced new commands like evaluation, but this one has been in the README for a little while, so I didn't have to add that in. And yeah, so basically just feel free to take a look and let us know upstream if you guys have any questions as you read over it.
I have a sort of a small, I guess, smallish topic maybe. It's more around handling breaking changes, because we're still kind of technically 0.18, 19. I kind of wanted to get a pulse for what people think, because there's a lot of refactoring that we kind of want to do with how things are being stored. For example, one thing I can think of is a PR I have open for a bit that reorganizes how models are downloaded, like the directory structure for all of that, to make it more seamless and consistent. For example, that would probably be a good change to have, but I also recognize that would be a breaking change, because it would change the locations of like where models are stored and how they're downloaded, etc. I think I see the value for it, but like I kind of wanted to see how people think we should approach breaking changes. Do we need to make everything backward compatible at this point already, or because we're not yet like 1.0, is it acceptable to just put out something in the release notes that we're changing this and then like make those changes? Like, I want to see how flexible we feel we can be right now. Go ahead, JJ.
It's still not 1.0, so sky's the limit, buddy.
Okay.
Like, until 1.0 shows up, that's when we have to start taking that stuff seriously. But people have to understand it's 0.
Okay.
Things change.
Yeah. It's
I agree.
Cool. Just good to have that on the record. Thanks.
Yeah, I think it's important to prioritize like making everything work properly for every OS and use case before we consider breaking changes, because I know there's a bunch of changes in the 19 milestone that we would consider breaking but are super important to getting functionality in like Mac OS and even Linux optimized more. So yeah, I agree. 1.0 should be when we can't make breaking changes. That being said, the config version is already set to 1.0, so we do have to be careful for breaking changes between versions of the config YAML. But again, like being careful of breaking changes for the config we can be a little lenient with what a breaking change really is, honestly. We could develop some tooling to convert configs between one version and another. But that's just one thing I did want to call out.
Yeah, makes sense.
I don't know if anyone else has any other topics. If not, we can call it here, or if anyone has any questions about the README or the release in general and how we're going to be doing it, feel free to let us know. I don't know if Nathan or JD or anyone, you guys have anything else to discuss?
I will have to miss the next meeting. I'm on PTO. but I think we're going to start looking at the 0.19 milestone in the next meeting as well. So if you're interested, or if you have a particular issue or PR you'd like to advocate for being in that milestone, please come. We're going to make a concerted effort to get more of the maintainer team attending these meetings. We've been doing that the last couple of weeks. We intend to keep doing that for the foreseeable future. So, yeah, very excited to get 0.18 out today. Like VJ said, it's been a painful pregnancy, but we're ready to deliver. And yeah, looking forward to the next one.
Thank you, Nathan. Thank you for that rallying speech. I appreciate it.
Thanks all.
I'll cut the recording here. Thank you, everybody.